Welcome to the third episode of the Gaming Kitchen. I was going to take a look into the news that came yesterday with Battlefront being offered up at $39.99 at Gamestop. Now, since the last video I made, there's been a lot of controversy going around with the fact that Battlefront was released as a bare bones game. That basically it had 4 maps. And 4 maps given to it with 6 heroes, with a couple of modes that was missing, as well as the fact that there are still maps that needs to be added, with all this stuff of DLC and season packs being $50. Now, as you go through YouTube, you're going to see a lot of videos where people are talking about how they're not spending money for this season pass because the season pass itself is $50, including the game itself, which was originally $60, which came to roughly around $110 for basically 2 games. And being a gamer, being a person who's played games for nearly 20 some years, I've been playing since I was like 5 years old in arcades. So I've seen this culture rise from being a 16-bit, side-scrolling, hop and jump and shoot, copy and paste type of industry, to it becoming now graphics that look like it's coming from a movie. And I've seen a change in cultures of the gaming industry where you would get your money's worth. We're back in today's culture and in today's gaming world, you got games like Battlefront that if it would have came out 15 years ago, you would have had space battles. You would have had 27 ships and vehicles and heroes and villains and stuff to play from. You wouldn't have had, 3 ships in the Star Wars original trilogy, when everyone knows that there were more vehicles than just X-Wings, A-Wings, Slave Ones, and Millennium Falcons. And I think that this $39.99 response that I saw on Facebook yesterday, as well as YouTube, is a response from the gaming community telling these developers and telling these companies, and most importantly the companies and not the developers, that they're just sick and tired of it. I think you have an era now of gaming where you have 2 definitive gamers, and the gamers who came from the old school side, which is from the Nintendo, or the Nintendo side to the Super Nintendo to the Nintendo 64, and are in their 30s or 40s, their mid to late 20s, grew up during a time where, if the only concern you had with a game was just blowing the dust out of the cartridge. You could sit up there and play 10 hours, 20 hours, 30 hours worth of content, and you would be satisfied after that. And then you have this new culture that's coming up now that was not around to buy games 10 years ago, let alone remember what it was like to sit down and play a game and not have to worry about the DLC or the content finishing the game for you. That is a problem in which people my age and up are starting to see now with the gaming culture. And if, like I said, you go around YouTube, you'll see videos commenting on how the pre-order culture is ruining the gaming industry, because a long time ago DLC used to be something that could help the story along, while the main story was the most important part. And you were able to finish the game, you were able to have unlocks, you were able to use cheat codes, you were able to, pass a game on a certain difficulty, and you could have those types of things benefit you. Now you got this thing where you can't even finish a game without the DLC. You can't, have a certain character unlock unless you have DLC. Now you have microtransactions. So the pre-order culture evolved from basically picking up something because of its rarity to now picking up something that someone else doesn't have for another 4 to 5 weeks, or another 2 to 3 months, or in a case of thinking that you have the upper hand with DLC, when all they're going to do is just release that out probably about a week later or when you reach a certain level. That's what people are finding out with Battlefront. Now, Battlefront has been out for about 3 weeks now, 3 going on 4 weeks. And this price drop, if you read between the lines, from my point of view, from my speculation, because the GameStop ad did say that it was going to be $39.99 for a limited time only. You know, a 50% or a 50% drop in a price of a game that new, that speaks volumes. And if you've been on the forums and on the EA forums, and you can see all the complaints and you can see all the people with the reviews and stuff, a lot of the complaints are the fact that they're selling a $60 game that's pretty much worth $19.99 worth of content. And you know, it's splitting the gaming community. It's definitely splitting the Battlefront community, and it's, you know, conveniently successful for them, quote unquote, as you know, GameStop did come out and say, which again, I don't believe in coincidences, came out and said that, I think the COO said that the sales for Battlefront were underwhelming. And EA came out and said, "Oh no, that's not true. It's not this. It's not that. You know, we're good in digital sales. And focus over here. Focus over here. Red herring. Red herring." And me personally, I like Battlefront. I love Battlefront. I think that it's for the graphics worth and what it brings to the table. I was the one that, you know, brought the season pass, brought all that stuff because I had money for it, and I do game videos, so I would love to have all that stuff. But on the other side of that fence are gamers, and I can understand where they're coming from, and I've been in that pool with them, where I'm saying I'm not spending this DLC for this content because the ends don't justify the means. You know, like if I'm sitting up here and I'm spending, you know, $110 for a game that has nothing in it as it is, what's the point of me giving money for something which I don't even know what I'm going to get? You know, I think that this $39.99 is more so a reflection on the consumer's voice in the gaming market, saying we're not going to pay for this stuff. We're not going to do this anymore. We're not going to sit up here and have you give us a bare bone game and sell us, you know, the rest of it in stock. Now, to be fair, I'm not helping the fight by me buying the DLC. I'm not. But another part of me is just that I don't care. I have bigger issues in life to deal with than, you know, to stand on a soapbox and protest the DLC stuff. But I have written articles on it, and I know where people are coming from with that. You know, and I tremendously have joined in those arguments. I think we're getting into a culture now where, you know, we have instant gratification and we don't work for achievements in games anymore. We want things right at our grasp. We want things given to us without hard work or effort. And I'm not saying everybody. It'd be unfair to throw a broad, sweeping statement with that. But the society of gaming now is that, you know, when you look on NBA 2K, you can buy your coins instead of working hard for them, instead of working out for them. You can, you know, if you want a certain card for Madden, you can go and, you know, you can purchase, you know, tokens using real money for that. Now, as much as I did say that I did spend for DLC content as in a season pass, I'm never going to spend money for microtransactions. I just don't see the logic in spending hard-earned money that could go towards food and paying bills to pay for an emoji. Is that what they call it? An emoji now? Which, I don't know. Just seems stupid. It doesn't make any sense to me. Like, Battlefront has emojis. I don't need emojis. You know, I could rather, instead of the diorama. Now the diorama is good if you want to take screenshots. You know, if you want to take screenshots, you want to upload them to PC, or you want to use them as your, you know, Facebook picture or whatever, they're good. But the diorama, didn't need it. You know, you didn't need the emojis. You didn't need all that stuff in there that takes up memory, takes up space, takes up time. Now, I'm not a game developer. I went to college to study history in my bachelor's, and, you know, for my master's, I studied management. And one of those things which I did learn was assessment of time and resources. And the fact of the matter is that when a gamer picks up a game like this that looks beautiful aesthetically, Battlefront is a very beautiful game on next gen. In fact, if you take all the HUDs off and everything, as you see right now, it looks like it's a movie, which is a great experience. But the main problem is the fact that it's lacking in areas in which people want. Now, I know a lot of people said they want the single player and whatever. The single player would be just played just once. It would be there just, for convenience. I mean, look how many Call of Duty games we got now where you get a single player, and the majority of the time people are playing a single player, or they're playing the zombie hideout stuff, or they're playing multiplayer afterwards. They rarely go back and play, single player unless there's a multiplayer type of, involvement in that mode. You'll see people coming back playing those modes again. So the single player stuff, I can understand where people are coming from with that, but whatever. I've played enough games in my time to know that single player, you only play it one time and then that's it. Unless you have achievements or unlocks or something like that, then you can go with that. Other than that, it's not a viable argument to me. Now, I think it should be in there, but I think also what they could have done was they could have implemented the space battles. I think that Star Wars is Star Wars with space battles. But then there's an argument that says that the first Battlefront didn't have space battles. That was Battlefront 2, which is true. Also, it's something to understand that maybe that wasn't enough time, maybe that the manpower, maybe the technology is different. Dealing with something of its time back then with Battlefront 2 is a whole lot different to deal with Battlefront now, which is in a way a reboot of the franchise. It's not really Battlefront 3, and people are starting to figure that out very swiftly. It's just not the way that games were classically, where when you sat up there and you played a game and you got the game in its full content. Now, that's not to say that DLC and expansion packs didn't exist during the time of, the PC age in the 90s and stuff like that. They were. But did they take away from the story, and did they take away from the game? It's just the same thing about special effects in movies. Special effects is not supposed to be the whole movie. Special effects is supposed to help you tell the story. That's what DLC should be as well. And game companies and all these big conglomerates and these big suits that sit up there in corporate are now starting to use those things to be the game. It's not used to help the game along. That's where gamers are starting to have a problem with the DLC content. When you start to look on your GameStop ads and your GameStop ads, and you're starting to see you get this one game and you get this DLC and that DLC and this specified content and everything. The pre-orders now with this DLC content is not like the way it was when you would pick up a Super Nintendo game. Back in the day, there were more game stores out there. Babbage's, Funko Land, your corner stores that were selling games. Those stores are now gone. So the only place you have to your convenience are your Best Buys, are your Walmarts, are your GameStops and stuff like that. People now are not pre-ordering that much anymore because the supply versus demand. There's more of a supply now. There's more of a supply now for video games. There's more supply for a game that you want. If you can't get it at GameStop, you can go to Best Buy and pick it up. If it's not at Best Buy, you can go to Walmart and pick it up. And most of the downloadable content that you get, or a special code that you get, if you wait 2 or 3 weeks, you can get that. This is the same problem in which people had with Arkham Knight. This is the same issue where, they had a season pass out there for $49.99, and many of the fans on the forums felt like the material in which was being distributed was lackluster. The DLC episodes were short. Some of them lasted between 10 to 15 minutes, depending upon how well you played it. While the rest of the story modes and stuff was just simply racetracks and stuff. Now, I'll be honest with you, in this coming weeks of December, you're going to have, costumes. You're going to have the Dark Knight costume, which is coming out. I can't wait for it. And me personally, I can see where people are coming from with this. I think they're getting sick and tired of having a game stripped of its nutrients and them just selling you something that was just, hashed in a microwave. And then they say, oh, well, if you want the rest of the dinner, you have to pay $70 for this and $70 for that. And to play devil's advocate, the argument is you don't have to pay for it. You don't have to pay for the DLC. You don't have to pay for the expansion packs. But at the same time, who wants to sit up there and just play a game the way that way? When you look at the Order 1886 and you see a game that was very beautiful graphic-wise, had a lot of the aesthetics that would, captivate you and, catch your eye. At the same time, it was a game that was for $60. It launched in February 2015, earlier this year. And many of the negative reviews, once again, was the fact that it was lacking depth. This was a $60 game that looked beautiful, but it only had the replay value of one time. This is another example to why gamers they're kind of getting sick and tired of it. They're kind of getting sick and tired of, well, not even kinda, they are. They're getting sick and tired of the fact that these game companies are providing these things, they're providing these games, they're providing the materials for you to play with, but the original source that should tell the story, as I mentioned earlier, is not doing it. It's just not cutting it. And I think this is a problem with the industry. I think this is a problem that is put on the consumer, and this is a communication problem. I think it's more so a communication problem on their side, the developers and the company, more so the company, than what it is the customer. Customers want a product. Customers want a product that's going to give them their money's worth. And if they're going to sit up there and spend $60 to $80 to $110 for a game, which sounds ridiculous in its own now. They even got sports games now doing it. Sports games come out, the MLB 16 to show, that hasn't disclosed any features whatsoever and probably will just be another rehash of MLB 15. And they'll go about and add unnecessary features to it and no one wants and no one needs to deal with. Instead of dealing with the core requirements, we'll be charging $100 for a game. I think it's getting ridiculous. I think now we're getting to the point where we have to ask ourselves, is it worth it? $60 at some point was a lot. Then once they saw that people were buying $60 games, they said, okay, let's do $80. Let's do something like that. It just comes down to money. And I think that once these companies start listening is when the consumer becomes satisfied. And once the consumer becomes satisfied is when the companies start to realize that we're going to have to talk with our wallets. That going to forums and complaining is one thing, and yeah, they hear you, but they got the cash. If they don't have the sales like Battlefront has, then you'll start seeing some changes. But it has to come that way. And unfortunately, it's gotten to that point. It's gotten to a point where, we're not paying for games anymore. We're kind of being gouged in our pockets. And the game stores with the DLC and the pre-order culture and all this stuff it just builds upon one another. It just builds and it stacks and it stacks and it stacks. And we're getting to a point now where, you're spending almost a home equity loan to go out and buy a game. I know it's a big exaggeration, but it really feels like it. And to be quite honest with you, I don't know anymore. I think that as gaming is moving forward and as I'm getting older and a lot of the generations are getting older, that you got better things to spend money on than just some $100 game that's, you're going to be trading in the next 2-3 months anyway. I think that they need to stop getting people as beta testers who are not getting paid to do it, which is what they do for customers and everything else. I think that we just need to get back to the basics. And I think that this $39.99 that GameStop has issued out speaks those volumes. I always say that people should pay attention as they get older because you don't have people around to give you the answer all the time. A lot of times the answer will give itself to you. And I don't think that the $39.99 after 3 weeks from the company that said that the sales were lackluster wasn't just done for the fun of it. It's being done because they're not making the sales. They're not making the sales because the guy in charge of EA came out 2 weeks ago and said, well, maybe we made it too casual. Maybe we made it directed towards the casual audience. Well, duh. And it's starting to show in the sales. So while you are appealing towards the casual fan pretty much doesn't care. But the hardcore gamers, they're the ones that want something. They're the ones that want more bang for their buck. And if you're going out spending $110 for a game, or $120, or sometimes now $200, $500 if you include, you know, what Destiny's done, which that's a different video for another day. I'm not even going to touch that because I traded mine in because I had ethics. But this is where we're at. This is where we're at in the gaming culture. You have to speak with your wallet. You have to be satisfied with the level you set for yourself as a consumer, as usual, because if you don't, other people are just going to speak for you, and they're just going to roll along that money train, and they're just going to use your dollars, and they're just going to pay their bills, and they're just going to eat their food. That's just how it goes, you know. And I don't hate them for it. I don't have any hate, you know. It's a job. Everybody makes their money, but that's where it's at, guys. I hope you enjoyed the video. Be sure to subscribe and leave comments. I hope you guys enjoyed the video again. Thank you very much, and take care of yourselves.